Can a simple modification to the hybrid system change Ferrari's course in the 2025 season? Are we facing Hamilton and Leclerc's salvation or the last nail in the SF25 coffin? Ferrari faces the Canada Grand Prix with an emotional and technical weight that cannot be underestimated. The 2025 season has been, until now, a roller coaster of frustrations and disappointments. After a pre-season that had generated moderately optimistic expectations, reality hit hard from the first race in Australia. The SF25, a redesigned car almost entirely with respect to the SF24, presented from the first moment structural inconsistencies that soon revealed as symptoms of a deeper crisis. The pilot duo, composed of Charles Leclerc and the newcomer Lewis Hamilton, has been dealing not only with the rivals on the track, but with a car that seems to have its own personality. Hamilton, with all his experience and ability to adapt, confessed to having underestimated the complexity of the Italian car. His first impressions reflected a sense of disconnection. He could not find confidence in braking, and the entrance to curve was more unpredictable than expected. In Australia, he was a victim of erroneous strategic decisions and a poorly managed rain, elements that reflect not only technical limitations, but also operational errors of a team that continues to try to reinvent itself. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, has demonstrated an admirable capacity to squeeze the car even in unfavorable conditions. However, his impetus has led him to make mistakes, as seen in China, where he damaged his front wing after an unnecessary touch with his own partner. This incident was not only expensive in terms of time and points, but also exposed an invisible fracture. The internal pressure to stand out before a legendary teammate is pushing Leclerc to the limit, sometimes to the detriment of the collective result. At the structural level, the SF25 has been internally defined as a car with a too ambitious architecture. Ferrari changed more than 90% of its components with respect to its predecessor, seeking a technical revolution instead of a controlled evolution. This has generated an unwanted side effects chain. The rear suspension is too rigid, which prevents running near the ground without suffering from the rebound or wear of the flat bottom. The aerodynamic system, especially in the diffuser and venturi channels, fails to maintain a constant load, which affects both traction and efficiency in medium-speed curves. In addition to this, the hybrid system has been showing signs of thermal fatigue in the last races. Although there have been no catastrophic failures, power cuts caused by ERS protection strategies that come into action have been detected when internal temperatures exceed certain thresholds. This has been especially harmful in high-energy demand circuits, where losing a few horses for a few tenths can mean being advanced without response option. It is a layout that punishes design errors, which forces efficient traction, good braking capacity, and optimal power delivery. In other words, it is the type of track where the defects of a car cannot hide. And that is where Ferrari, aware of what is at stake, has decided to introduce modifications that, although not in appearance, could be key to reverse the course of a season that, until now, has been more pain than glory. To understand the magnitude of what Ferrari has modified in the SF25 for the Canada Grand Prix, you must first assume an uncomfortable truth within Maranello. They could not afford another weekend with empty hands. It was not viable to continue trusting minor adjustments or expecting rival errors to make their own failures. Therefore, although from the outside the speech was prudent, the technical modifications implemented in the power unit and the hybrid system represent an emergency intervention designed to transform the way in which the car delivers and retains energy on one of the most demanding tracks of the calendar. Unlike traditional motor changes, which involve the replacement of the internal combustion unit, turbo and structural components, what Ferrari has done in Canada is to redirect all its technical resources towards an optimization of the MGUK and the ERS. The logic behind this decision is clear. Electric delivery is, in essence, which determines the reaction capacity of a car in high-demand areas such as Long Straight in the Gilles-Villeneuve circuit. But here it is not just about releasing more power, but about how that energy is distributed and how the system responds to temperature peaks or aerodynamic stress. Thermal management has been one of the main obstacles of the SF25 since the start of the season. Ferrari has been operating in a very narrow temperature margin, which means that any prolonged effort, whether it is a series of laps in a rhythm or an attempt of aggressive classification, made the hybrid system enter into protection modes that limited the power to preserve reliability. With these new modifications, the refrigeration flow of the ERS has been reviewed, adding improvements in heat exchangers and the distribution of the coolant, which allows to maintain more stable temperatures for longer. Another essential component of this evolution is the redesign of energy delivery maps. Ferrari has developed new algorithms that not only optimize accelerator modulation, but also allow the system to learn in real time the best way to distribute energy depending on the driving style and track conditions. This dynamic adaptation capacity is crucial in Canada, where extreme braking followed by strong accelerations require the MGUK to recover and deliver energy with surgical precision. In addition, the hybrid system control software has been reconfigured to integrate additional sensor data that monitor the wear and tear of the tires, aerodynamic loads, and the available traction. This allows the car to make decisions in real time on how to maximize the use of the ERS without compromising stability or forcing premature overheating. The logic of these modifications is not simply technical, but also strategic. In Ferrari, they know that they cannot beat McLaren or Red Bull on all fronts at the same time. But if they can exploit an advantage in the management of electricity, they could recover competitiveness in classification and better defend the positions in the race. Hamilton, who historically has been a teacher in the use of the hybrid system thanks to his golden age with Mercedes, could greatly benefit from this new implementation. Its ability to anticipate the wear of the components and their precision in acceleration and braking makes it the ideal pilot to take advantage of this evolution. Leclerc, meanwhile, could recover that sense of control that has missed this year so much, having a car that responds better in energy transitions. However, there is an inherent risk. These improvements have not been tested in real career conditions. Ferrari has trusted the simulations and data obtained in internal tests, but only when the green flag flies in Montreal we will know if these decisions have been successful. And if they fail, there will be no room for excuses. Because at this point of the season, each race without significant points represents a more condemnation towards competitive irrelevance. Ferrari has opted for change, but the true verdict will be dictated by the Canadian asphalt. The biggest question that surrounds Ferrari in the Canada Grand Prix is not related only to the technical efficacy of the updates implemented. The nucleus of the discussion revolves around whether these modifications arrive in time to avoid a structural collapse of the season. Because the truth is this: Ferrari is not playing only by points, he is playing for credibility. And that is a currency that in Formula One is won with immediate and consistent results. The question that everyone is asked, inside and outside the paddock, is whether this improvement package represents the beginning of a rebirth or the last attempt before a fall without return. SF25 interventions have been necessary, but do not address all the evils that the car drags. The rear suspension, for example, remains a critical component not completely resolved. Although they have worked on the geometry of the shock absorbers and in a greater slack around the gearbox to improve the control of the handling height, the truth is that these adjustments are of a palliative type. They do not transform the basis of a design that from its conception suffers from a close operational window, which means that it only works correctly under very specific conditions of temperature, load, and configuration. And this is where Ferrari faces is evident. The package introduced in Canada is designed to improve performance within a certain range, but if the conditions are not optimal, the benefits could be minimal or even non-existent. It is not just a matter of whether the new hybrid system works correctly or if the redesign of the flat background improves aerodynamic load. It is whether the car can sustain competitive performance during a full weekend, without depending on other people's errors or meteorological miracles. Because until now, Ferrari has shown that it can be fast on a return, but suffers to maintain that long performance, especially when the wear of the tires begins to condition the balance of the car. Another factor that complicates the equation is the mood of the team. Public statements have been measured, but internally the environment is of maximum pressure. Engineers are working with an almost null margin, aware that another failure would compromise not only the current season, but also the 2026 project, which is already in development. Lewis Hamilton, although committed to the team, has suggested that his patience has limits. And Charles Leclerc, in his eagerness to demonstrate leadership inside the garage, runs the risk of making more mistakes if the car continues without giving him the confidence he needs. In the current context of the championship, the competition is not waiting. McLaren has consolidated his leadership with a balanced car and two pilots in a form. Red Bull, despite its internal instability and recent alignment changes, continues to have a Verstappen capable of squeezing the maximum of any configuration. Mercedes, with a car still evolving, has surprised consistency in technical clues. Ferrari cannot afford more land. And therefore, the race in Montreal is not only a technical evidence, but a sentence on the viability of SF25 as a real contender. The Canada GP will maximize all virtues and expose each of the weaknesses of the SF25. If the modifications work, if the hybrid system responds as expected, and if the flat background allows a firmer passage and curve, Ferrari could have found the turning point. But if not, the consequences will be deep. Technically, it will be necessary to restructure the car for the following races. Sports, because its role will be consolidated as the third or fourth team in the hierarchy. And emotionally, because the resurgence narrative that had been building since 2024 could be completely broken. If the improvements introduced in the SF25 meet the expectations, we could be facing the beginning of a completely new narrative for the rest of the 2025 season. The story of the rebirth of a legend, which knew how to reformulate from within in the middle of the chaos, and again aspire to everything. I invite you to leave your opinion in the comments. Real optimism or passing illusion? Has the Scuderia found the key, or has it simply made up a structure that needs an even deeper revolution? And if this analysis has been useful, do not forget to subscribe, because this is just the beginning.